that is keeping people stressed out is teachers. And teachers are among, apparently, according to a study from the OECD, teachers in Australia are the most stressed out in the world. Second most stressed out teachers in the world, even though they only spend less than half their time in the classroom. And this, to me, is staggering but not surprising, if that makes any sense. They only spend 20 out of their 46.5-hour working week in front of the class, spending 8.4 hours planning lessons, 5.7 hours marking, and 4.7 hours on the phone to angry parents. No, 4.7 hours on admin, among other tasks, which probably is on the phone to angry parents. According to the OECD snapshot, the Teacher and Learning International survey of teachers and principals from 55 nations shows Australia's teacher stress levels are second only to, what would you think, the Sudan?
I know the answer, so you can't try it on me, Joe, but
Papua
go
New
for
Guinea?
it.
No, Canada.
I know, it's amazing.
The only place even more boring and stable than Australia.
And in fact, it's specifically Alberta, Canada, for some reason, is the place that is the most stressed in the world. The top 5 is Alberta, Australia, New Zealand, Malta, and the United States. And the last time they did this survey was 2018. It was 25% of Australian teachers said they were stressed most of the time, and now it's 34%. So it's quite a significant increase we've had in the last 6 or 7 years. And I think this is why, and part of the reason is they say, that it's not necessarily because of the amount of time they're spending in the class, but it's all this other stuff they have to deal with. And teachers are expected to keep up with all this sort of business. They're going to have all these, professional development days and all this garbage that gets sent down that they've got to keep on top of. They want to teach, right? Most people, I believe, who want to go into teaching to teach. Many of them then get the job, they become a teacher and realise that it's very hard to actually just go about the business of being a teacher. And all those people leave. They crack it after a few years and they walk away. And that's how you end up with a broken education system that's full of teachers who are only there because they want to indoctrinate children. I think it's a large part of the problem. These people who want to do good work just cannot cope with the other garbage that comes along with the job, and they walk away and go somewhere else and find someone who'll pay them more money to do less work.
Exactly, and 69% of them say the reason they're so stressed is because they're doing too much admin, 50% say it's too much marking, and 46% say it's trying to keep up with the changing curriculum and school requirements. And those really are the top 3 things. None of them really impact, can these children read and write? Can they do basic arithmetic? It's all this extra stuff around the edges. And you have to ask, what is all the administrative work that they're being tasked with? And this is part of the problem. We have a bloated education bureaucracy. We have duplication between the states and the federal government, and then the schools themselves. We have an ever-changing and expanding curriculum. But really, we just need to get back to basics, because despite the extra billions and billions of dollars we're spending, despite all the new curriculum updates and the cross-curriculum priorities and this and that and the diversity and whatever, education standards are still going backwards and our teachers are still getting stressed. And the other factor we have to talk about is classroom discipline. I mean, that is also one of the reasons that they're stressed. And we have some of the worst behaved classrooms in the world. And I can't help but notice the jump that's happened since COVID. And I reckon, you take kids out of the classroom for 2 years, lots of kids have probably forgotten how to behave. They haven't had to comply with discipline for years and gotten ADHD and all this stuff from being on screens for too long. And now it's a nightmare. So these problems are just compounding.
Yeah, the COVID stuff was definitely, the COVID stuff was the last thing that should ever have happened to these kids. And closing schools was an absolute disgrace. It was never evidence-based. It was based on a moral panic, and every premier and politician that signed up for that honestly should be deeply ashamed. It was a disgraceful thing to have happened, and it was just a sort of a snowballing effect, an avalanche effect. One state did, the private schools did it, then one state did it, and then everyone thought, oh, if we don't do it, we're the ones that are killing children. So, but parking that to one side, this is something I've done heaps of work on. So, and the good news is, to preface all of it, is that it's turning around. So they're actually changing it, and they're changing the curriculum to go back to basics. So it is direct instruction, evidence-based learning, reading, writing, arithmetic, phonics, the whole bit. And both the state, New South Wales government anyway, and the federal government are doing that. And the federal government obviously has oversights over the education of teachers, so getting people teaching degrees. And part of the problem has been that the threshold for getting into a teaching degree is so low that people were doing it sometimes because they just couldn't get into their first choice. And so you had people you have a huge amount of people who are obviously the best teachers in the world and the most dedicated people in the world, but you also had people who were going in there because they couldn't get into any other degrees or because it was what they could get. And then when they got to the other end of that degree, they weren't actually prepared to do the hard work that teaching requires. It is an incredibly hard job, and they weren't getting enough classroom time as well. So people teacher graduates weren't coming out with the training they needed to be able to control the classroom and to control and impose discipline. And so they were burning out like no tomorrow. So there was a figure, something like, I think after 5 years, something like 50% of teachers had left the profession. And we've now got a crippling teacher shortage because of that. And there's been other research that shows that teachers feel really undervalued. So a majority of teachers in another survey that Monash Uni did said that teachers felt that most people didn't, in the community, not just kids, but parents in the general community, didn't respect them. And there's no way you are going to go into a job where you don't think people respect you. And of course, what does that mean? That means there's even more of a shortage. The ones who are left are even more overworked. The classes are even bigger. Discipline's an even bigger problem. They get more and more stressed out. They leave the profession. You have a death spiral.